Hello everyone, this is Shankar and welcome to another video. In this video, I'm going to talk about how we can create a Spring MVC application. So if you're not already subscribed to my channel, please do subscribe. And when you subscribe, please turn on the notifications so that you never miss a video on my channel. So for this demo, I have already created a project. I've named it Spring MVC demo. So let's first take a look at the dependencies for this project. So let's open up pom.xml and take a look at the dependencies. So for the dependencies, we have Spring Boot Starter Actuator. So that would add basic metrics to the project. And then we have Spring Boot Starter Web. So that would make this application a web application. And then we have Spring Boot Dev Tools. So that's gonna help us by restarting the server when we save any of our classes. And then we have Spring Boot Starter Test. This is for testing. And then we have H2 database. So this is a runtime database or an in-memory database. And then we have Spring Boot Starter Data JPA to interact with the database and provide a persistence layer for the database. And then we have thymeleaf. So this is going to be the front-end template for our MVC application. So those are the dependencies that we have for our project. Now let's take a look at the classes that we have. So this is essentially the entry point for our application. So we have this annotation here, Spring Boot application, and this is going to make this application a Spring Boot application. And then we have this main function here. So this is going to be the entry point for our application. Let's take a look at the model for our application. So this is the entity class for our application. So we're going to have a database, or we're going to have a table inside the database which represents which is represented by this class. So inside this class we have 4 attributes: username, password, first name, and last name. So here I have annotated this class as an entity class. So this class is going to represent a table from the database, and that table is going to be named as user. And then that table is going to have 4 columns, namely username, password, first name, and last name. And here I have provided basic validations, and I've just set some message, and I've made these fields mandatory, so they cannot be null. And these are the messages that will be printed if the validation rules are not met. And then we have the getters and setters for this Pojo class, and then we have the toString method as well. So this is basically going to be our model. And let's take a look at the DAO layer. So here we have an interface called user repository, which extends JPA repository, and the type for this JPA repository is user, and the ID is going to be of type string. And inside this we have one method, query method, called find by username. So if you're not already familiar with query methods and Spring Data JPA, I would recommend you to take a look at my other video where I talk about Spring Data JPA. I'll put the link in the description. And this is essentially a repository which is going to be acting as the persistence layer for our application. And then let's take a look at the service. So we have one service class called user service, and here we have a user repository AutoWire. So Spring is going to provide an implementation for this particular interface and for this particular query method. And here we have methods such as find user by username, and then save user, delete all users, and find all users. So these are basically repository methods that we're calling here. And apart from that, we have the controller. So this class is named as login controller, and here we have a user service auto-wired, and then we have these mappings here. So we have a get mapping for the home page, and we have an endpoint for registration. So this is /register, and then we have an endpoint for save/save, and then we have an endpoint for fetch. And apart from that, we have these HTML pages. So we have this login.html. This is essentially going to be our home page or a login page, the landing page when we start the application, or when we hit the URL. This is going to be our landing page. So this is the login form that we have here, and there's also a link for registering ourselves if we are a new user, or if you're not already if you're not already registered with this particular website, then we have this link for registering ourselves. And then we have this registration page. So here again we have another form which takes in the details for registration and for getting ourselves registered to this website. And then we have a successful registration page, and then we have a welcome page. So let's just run this application and see how it works. So I'm going to say, alright, one more thing. Let's take a look at application.properties. So this is going to run on port number 8282. And let's just run this application now. So I'm going to say run as Spring Boot app. Alright, so we have our application up and running, and let's open up the browser and hit a localhost 8282. So first we're going to take a look at the H2 console that is provided by the H2 dependency that we have. So when we put the H2 dependency in our pom.xml, we get a console that shows us the tables and the records inside those tables, or the columns and the rows inside those tables, and it provides a user interface for viewing the records and stuff. So that is present at h2-console. Okay, so I'm first going to test the connection. Connection is successful, and when I say connect, I can see this user table. So if I do a select start from user, right now we have four columns inside this table, but we don't have any record inside this table. And I'm going to say localhost 8282. So this is going to take me to the landing page of our application. And this is how the landing page looks. So we have a login form here, and we have a link for registering ourselves if we are not already registered with the website. So first let's try something. First, we don't have any user inside the database, so I'm going to give an invalid user and an invalid password, and I'm going to say submit. So we have this message which pops up, username not found. So since we don't have that user inside of our database, it says it gives us this message, username not found. Now let's take a look at what happens inside the application and how the data travels and how the pages are, how the login, how the controllers are called and how the pages are called, HTML pages are called. So first, when we go to this URL, this is our landing page. So what happens is we are basically hitting this particular, or we are invoking this particular method, because if we are not giving any path for this get mapping, it would take us since we haven't provided any path here, and this too doesn't take any path, so this get maps, this method gets mapped to this request 8282, and what it does is it returns this login. So the internal view resolver is going to take us to this login page, and here we are setting a new object of user. So this is gonna get binded to this form here, and when we are setting the username and password here, it gets binded to this user. So this is essentially a bean that gets created for the user object or the user class. And let's use this new register new user. So when we click that, it takes us to this endpoint. So essentially we are clicking this link here, so this is taking us to register endpoint, and let's take a look at register endpoint. So here we have the register endpoint. So this method is getting invoked when we call this register endpoint, and what it does is it just binds a new user object and returns and takes us to this registration page. So here we have registration.html. So the object or the bean that we see here is getting binded to this object that we create here, and the field names are same as the field names that we have inside of this user class or our model class. So here we have username, password, first name and last name, and these are exactly the same fields that we have here. So this bean, or this bean is getting binded to this object that we have created here, and when we click on submit, it takes us to this particular endpoint gets invoked. So let's take a look at save. So this particular method here gets invoked. So what it does is whatever object or whatever bean is returned by this form is fetched here, and then what we are doing is we are calling the user service and saving this record inside of our database, and then we are again binding this bean, and we are calling it user, and we are using this user object to bind that particular user to this particular bean, and then we are returning the successful registration page. So inside successful registration, we just have this message saying successful registration for user.first name. So let's register a user here. So I'm going to say user1, class 1, and then let's say test name 1 and test last 1. I'm going to click on submit. So when I click on submit inside the registration page. This is the registration.html, so it would take me to this. It would call this particular controller method. So this method is getting invoked, and then we have this user bean that is getting binded to this particular user that we sent while registering ourselves, and then we are sent to the successful registration page. So inside of the successful registration page, we have this message that we see here: successful registration for test name 1, and test name 1 is nothing but the user first name that we just registered. And now let's take a look at the database. So we have one user inside of our database. So this is the user that is getting registered inside or register with our website. And then let's try to enter the credentials for the user that we just registered, and I'm gonna give a wrong password. So the username is correct, but the password is not correct. So if I click on submit, it says password is incorrect. So what just happened? So I was at this login page, and then I typed in a correct username, but the password that I entered was incorrect. And then I click on submit. So once I click submit, it would take me to this this controller method. So fetch, and it's a post method. So it's taking me here. This method is getting invoked. So what it does is it grabs this user object or user bean that is returned by the form, and it does a database query, and it tries to find if that user is present inside the database or not. So if it does this, the username was correct, so it would find a user inside of the database with that particular username. So if user is not null, so this won't be null. So it would come here and check this condition if user.getPassword equals cuser.getPassword, but this condition won't match because our password was incorrect. So it would come here to the else block, and inside the else block, what we are doing is we are setting a model attribute called message and saying password is incorrect. So this is exactly what we see here. Password is incorrect. And then we are returning the welcome page. So it returns this page. It returns, and the welcome page just shows a message that we are setting here as a model attribute. So this is a message that we see. And let's take a look at our database now. It shouldn't have any change. So yep, we have the same user that we have already registered. So let's try with the correct username and correct password. So I'm going to say pass1 and submit. So now we have a successful entry into the database or into the website, and we see the first name of the user, welcome test1. So what just happened is, inside of the login form, I put the username which was correct, and I put the password which was correct. So both the username and password were correct, and this controller method is getting invoked. So this particular method is getting invoked here, and whatever bean we are sending, or whatever bean is getting sent from, or object is getting sent from the form, login page form, is being grabbed by this particular method, and then it is making a database query with that particular username, and it finds a user with that particular username. So this is not null, cuser is not null, and then when it checks for the password matches as well, because this time we give a correct password, and we get this message welcome, the first name of the user, and we return. to the welcome page, and welcome page just shows the message that is being returned by the controller. So this is what we see. So let's register one more user, see how it works. I'm going to say pass2. Okay, we don't have this user in our database as of now, so if I submit, it'll show me, it should give me a message that the username is not correct or something of that sort. Okay, so we have this message, username not found. So let's register one more user. Now say user2 pass2 and test name 2 last name 2. Submit. Successful registration for test name 2. And if we go to our console, h2 console, and make a database query for all our users, we get 2 users registered with us. And if we try to log in using user2 and pass2, we should be able to log in successfully into the website. Yeah. So this is basically how Spring MVC works, and this is a very simple example that I showed, but we can do a really we can do really cool stuff. We can do really complex things using Spring MVC. I'm going to share this project with you guys on GitHub. I'm going to put the link in the description below for the GitHub repository. I hope you guys enjoy this video. If you did enjoy, please give it a thumbs up, and thanks for watching.